This episode is brought to you by America's Christian Credit Union, where your money grows and your values thrive. As you moved more into whether it's molecular biology or liberal politics, how did that push you further into any kind of an anti-religious perspective? And what do you think that you're speaking of how once you actually engaged in it, it was different than you thought, but yet there is this, again, this very strong sensibility, particularly in politics, and there's a strong division of thought. And I wondered, as someone who used to be kind of on the inside of that or coming from that perspective, what do you think is informing that kind of very resistant or negative hue over religion and religious people, that whole thing that's causing such a division?
So firstly, the molecular biology for me, I say, because I remember distinctly at the end of my degree saying to myself, I think I'm more sure that there's a God than I was at the start. So it actually had the opposite of what people might think. And I think that's because, I mean, I really loved science. I thought it was so interesting. But because I understood it well, I also understood what it was not. So it didn't offer an ethical framework. It didn't offer certainties. It offered a method, the scientific method, that you could use to explore the material world. But it was limited, and I could see that really easily. And so although while I found it really fascinating, I didn't see that it provided answers to the world's problems really. But no, in my degree, and there was a Christian who would come. I was involved with the student newspaper, and we were a pretty godless bunch. At that time, like a lot of universities, it was a very sort of alcohol fueled and pretty, um, party. It was a party lifestyle. And a Christian guy did come in and try and persuade us of a better way. And I remember just being scathing. I remember having an argument with him about, yeah, but doesn't it's not really a virgin birth, because the word virgin means uh, it means young woman and all this stuff that but nonsense really. But it's come through the culture somehow. Um, so the science wasn't a problem. If anything, it was helpful to my faith. But the liberal beliefs, that's an interesting question, where exactly it's come from. And now that I've read and thought about it more, I think it's had a long history. I think the new atheists, Richard Dawkins, obviously a famous Brit, and Christopher Hitchens, another Brit, they're in some ways products of the culture that I grew up in, which was very secularized. But this sort of secular, these sort of liberal ideas that you don't really need religion, and actually religion can be quite harmful, really. And um, it had come through our TV screens and the media. It had come from having a very secularized church as being the example of Christianity. There was various philosophers that I think were very influential, postmodern philosophers latterly, but the 19th century biblical scholars who started to pull apart the Bible and be very skeptical of it. I think it all sort of filtered down to this for England being a particularly secular place. So yeah, it was. Mostly, I think it was the media and films that I picked up these sort of negative ideas. It really wasn't thought through very much, and so when I started to explore it properly, then I actually found how fascinating it is, and how I think the good word would have been ignorant. I was ignorant of what Christianity really was, what it taught, and of a worldview that was just different to mine, it being very secular and liberal.
So your secular liberal view, you obviously contended for it in secular publications. It was your view of the world. How, if I may, how was your life? Were you driven by the purpose of promoting this kind of secularized view, getting it out there? I've gathered from you that you were seeking to do good, to solve human ills, to try to use this more leftist or liberal perspective to somehow um, again improve humanity, improve the world somehow. How was your personal world living in this view? Did you feel that it was satisfying? Was it meaningful? Was it giving you all you thought it would?
Good question. What was my purpose? I think if you'd asked me, I might have said something like doing good in the world, um, or wanting to make the world a better place. But I might have said that. Really, was that my purpose? I don't think it was, looking back. Um, I had good intentions maybe, but they weren't really played out in practice. Looking back now, I would say it was quite a self-focused life. The main purpose that I'd grown up with was about getting educated so that you can get a good job so that you get a reasonable income and get a house, and not have to worry. Um, there was a lot of focus on entertainment, on leisure, um, and really, when you think about all of those things, they're quite self-serving. And I think really that's what was driving me. This sort of idea of um, searching for a better life, or and I did have intention. So I changed career. I left journalism and wanted to retrain as a clinical psychologist because I wanted to help people. But realistically, it's also it's a good career. It's a well-paid job, like journalism. Very interesting. I like to be challenged mentally, so um, that was another, yeah, being having things that would be difficult, be a sort of obstacle to overcome. That was part of the purpose. So it was quite confused, really, in lots of ways, and certainly looking back, I don't think I was really clear what I believed or why I was doing anything really, other than um, meeting these sort of I think selfish is a fair word. Um, Meeting these sort of goals of career and um, finding the right relationship, so that I can be happy, and ideally making other people happy along the way. Um, but they are, looking back, they were quite empty, and there's so much more to the world than that. But I just didn't have any idea of, I just had such a narrow worldview of this very secular liberal worldview. Couldn't see beyond that, or what might other options might be.